It breaks my heart.
Cherie Sharkey fights back tears as she pours through documents related to the mystery surrounding the death of her 21-year-old son, Michael.
4:30 in the morning, I had the knock on the door from two troopers, and it changed my whole life.
It was June 21st, 2012. The troopers informed Cherie her son Michael was dead after crashing his car on Route 22 in Dresden.
I lost my only son.
According to the official police report, Michael's 2006 Chevy Cobalt went off the road and slammed into a rock ledge. The impact caused the car to burst into flames. Michael was able to crawl about 100 feet from the vehicle, but he died at the scene from severe burns to most of his body.
He was a good driver.
Parts of the blue Chevy Cobalt still mark the site of the crash 2 years later. But why Michael Sharkey went off the road remains a mystery. Toxicology reports ruled out drugs and alcohol. Police believe speed may have been a factor, but can't say for sure because the computerized black box inside the vehicle burned in the fire, destroying all evidence of whether the car was properly working at the time of the crash. The flames were so intense, it's unknown if the airbags ever deployed.
It's a worst nightmare that any parent has to go through, and it could have been prevented.
Cherie Sharkey feels like she finally got answers earlier this year. General Motors recalled more than 2 million cars, including Chevy Cobalts, with faulty ignition switches. The defect can cause the engine to stall, leaving the driver unable to steer or use the brakes. It also prevents the airbags from deploying.
I feel like he was murdered.
That's because over the past few months, evidence has surfaced GM has known about the faulty ignition switches for nearly a decade. But because it affected so many cars, it would have cost millions to fix. And with the automaker strapped for cash, a recall was never issued. General Motors is now being investigated by the U.S. Justice Department, and new CEO Mary Barra has repeatedly been in the hot seat in front of lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
With all that information available, why did it take so long to issue the recall?
I cannot tell you why it took so long.
One engineer advised against further action because there was, quote, no acceptable business case to provide a resolution, and the PRTS was closed. Is that correct?
If that is true, that is a very disturbing fact.
Yes,
that
it
is not the way we make decisions.
GM documents revealed the part to fix the ignition switch would have cost just 57 cents per vehicle.
I really feel that for 57 cents, my son would still be alive.
Clearly, GM made some major errors. It's also fairly clear that the federal regulators missed it, that they weren't focused on this appropriately.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has also come under fire. Lawmakers have criticized the administration for being too buddy-buddy with the automaker and ignoring red flags for years about potential safety issues.
We are definitely moving to a culture that is focused on the consumer, that is focused on the customer, is focused on high quality and safety, and that's my direction, and that's what we're doing today.
Well, you got to clean up both houses, in my view, and we need to make sure that the federal regulators are on these kinds of issues and are not relying on the company to, in effect, provide conclusory information. The company needs to provide factual data to the NTSB so that they can actually take a look at it and make a decision.
To date, nearly 24 deaths have been linked to the faulty ignition switch. So far, Michael Sharkey's name is not on that list.
Whether it is or isn't, I know that's what happened.
General Motors has brought in Kenneth Feinberg, a nationally recognized lawyer who specializes in assisting families of large claims cases. The company has already set aside $400 million to cover compensation costs, and that number could grow.
I have sole discretion under this program, agreed to by General Motors. Once I make a final determination as to eligibility or value, GM cannot second guess it. GM must honor my decision.
Nearly 1,000 claims have been filed, including the Sharkeys. Feinberg says the problem in many of these cases, the cars are long gone. His office will mainly rely on police reports and photos, along with maintenance records. Feinberg would not speculate how many victims GM will ultimately compensate.
Do you think GM really cares about Michael?
No, I don't think I think they want to get this done and over with.
To add insult to Michael's tragic death, it turns out he never had plans of getting behind the wheel of the 2006 Chevy Cobalt.
I found his paperwork saying he put money down on a Toyota.
Michael bought the car just 9 days before the crash. Why he left the lot with the Chevy Cobalt is a secret Michael took with him to his grave.
We'll never know, my son's dead.
Each day, as Cherie Sharkey fights for answers, she wears a necklace with her son's ashes. She said she'd like to see those responsible for the cover-up serve time in prison, but realizes that is very unlikely.
Do you think there will be justice for Michael?
I know there'll be justice for Michael. My last breath, I will at least make sure there's justice for Michael.
And that would be?
To have GM acknowledge he's one of their victims.
As a result of Michael's crash, Cherie Sharkey has launched a petition drive to enact more proactive notification measures, both locally and nationally, when it comes to motor vehicle recalls. It's called Stop Delays for Telling Car Buyers About Safety Recalls. It calls for a law that will require the Department of Motor Vehicles, car dealers, and private sellers to disclose any recalls at the time of sale. Currently, New York's DMV does not have the software to access such information. And while most sellers do disclose such information, it is not required. Shortly after Michael's crash, the Sharkeys received 2 recalls about Michael's Chevy Cobalt, unrelated to the ignition switch. While it likely would not have prevented Michael's crash, Cherie Sharkey says it serves as an example of how important it is to drive a safe vehicle. Senator Betty Little is already talking to other lawmakers in Albany about the issue.
We're going to do some research on it, continue to talk about it, and see how we can do this, because I know there are people who get a notification of a recall and basically never do anything about it. And then when they sell the car or trade the car in, you know, the next person that buys it wouldn't even know that there had been a recall on it. So I think there ought to be some way that we can check back and notify people when they purchase a car. It had a recall 2 months ago, or had a recall 6 months ago.
In my heart, if I can save one person's life, my son did not die in vain. And that's why I started the page, Justice for Michael, to put all these recalls so people have knowledge. There's still a lot of people that don't know if their cars have recalls.
A link to Cherie Sharkey's petition can be found on Facebook. On the site, Sharkey also posts all recalls to help create awareness for everybody who gets behind the wheel of a car.